Slice of SciFi.
Hello and hi, welcome to another Slice of Sci-Fi. I'm Summer Brooks, and with me today is a very special guest who's going to be diving deep into the lore and legends of Hollywood memorabilia with me, Brian Chanes, the Executive Director of Hollywood Entertainment Memorabilia for Heritage Auctions. And Heritage has a Hollywood themed auction coming up July 25th and 26th. If you're in the Dallas area, you might be able to attend in person and bid on some of the items we're going to be talking about. But I'm a movie nerd, I'm a TV geek, I'm a science fiction geek, and this auction has many items that would tempt me if I had, a budget to spend on them. Brian, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Great to be aboard.
I am always curious to see what items go up for auction. It seems like some items you see every 5 years or so, others you don't see at all. I think the last time I saw an auction that had items from Babylon 5 was maybe 15 years ago, maybe.
Well, the Babylon 5, I think we may have had something from Babylon 5 last October. In fact.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah,
Bummer.
it was in the
Yeah.
Greg Jein sale.
Oh, nice. But this auction caught my attention because there's a lot of art, there's a lot of original scripts, but there's also some consignments from actors, from current actors like George Chakiris, who played Bernardo in the original film version of West Side Story. Joe Pantoliano has a lot of items from The Fugitive and from The Matrix, and to start out with, how does that happen? How does a celebrity approach you and say, "Hey, I've got stuff in my storage shed from movies I worked on, and I need to make some more space"?
Well, actually, it comes from referrals, basically. People within their circle have heard of us, and then they end up, reaching out. And then, we start a dialogue, go and visit them and look through and rummage, and go from there. I did that with Jonathan Frakes. I went to Patrick Stewart's house. Marina Sirtis had come visited with her goodies, and Denise Crosby. I mean, we've dealt with a lot of people, the talent in Star Trek in particular, in other fields as well. I mean, and we did the estate of Gregory Peck as well. I didn't meet Mr. Peck; he'd passed away several years ago, but dealing with his family. So, it's something that happens. They hear about you, and you want to accommodate them the best you can and treat their property with the best respect and try to get them the best prices as possible.
So it's a matter of just not them presenting you with items, but you and your team going to see what you believe may have the widest interest, the broadest interest to fans and collectors.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you put an interest or an interest level or a value on some of the items that you come across?
It's a good question. It's basically gut and experience. I mean, I've been doing this for 34 years. And so, I have in my hand on the pulse. I know what collectors look for. I know what collectors don't care about. And so I'm able to divine it from past auction experience, and go from there. I mean, you can't just look at a film title and say, oh, that's popular. That's going to be, something that people are going to want. One thing, genre collecting, especially, you have a much stronger audience for people who are interested in sci-fi. Like, for instance, let's just use Star Trek since we're talking about it. The Starfleet uniform is iconic. People can have it on a form in their, theater or home theater, and people immediately know what it is, the Starfleet insignia, etc. If you just have off the rack costume worn by Adam Sandler in The Wedding Singer that just was not one of the, you're just not going to know what it is unless you had a label and explained what it is. The more valuable the things are the things that are instantly recognizable, and off the rack type pedestrian clothes, they're not nearly as valuable as it typically as things that are, like spacesuits, things that are bespoke and made specifically for the production, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Just as a side note, about a year ago, uh, the Ruth E. Carter exhibit was in a museum near here, and a couple of friends of mine and I, we went to see some of the costumes she had designed for movies like uh, Amistad and Black Panther and I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, and they look so fantastic in person. And I can't imagine how much one of her Dora Milaje costumes from Black Panther might go for because they're absolutely gorgeous in person. Um,
I would
the
love to handle it. I can
um,
tell you that. No, for sure. I mean, there would be people waiting in line for something like that.
oh, they're absolutely gorgeous, and I'm not sure where the tour is, but her exhibits can still be seen. So go see those costumes in person if you can. Uh, how does how does it work when you see something that you think might be of interest, but not of interest to a broader public? Like you see smaller items that you think might have a smaller base of people who might want to collect it. How do you go about separating something that's bigger from something that's smaller?
Well, here's a perfect example. My colleague came in yesterday, Michael, and he said, this is probably going to be something that's going to be a pass, but I just want to let you know about it. He said, I've got Pauly Shore's denim jacket with all the buttons and so forth from Encino Man. And I said, well, what's the provenance? And he said, well, it was actually given away in an MTV raffle, and it comes with documentation from MTV. And I said, if it didn't have that pedigree, I would probably pass. And frankly, it's one of those things that I said, Encino Man kind of has a cult following. In the Planet Hollywood sale we had in March, we had Pauly's really cool looking kind of scooter. It had like a zebra skin, upholstery, and it had surfboard stickers and stuff all over it. Kind of looked like a hippie bike, right? And something like that. Encino Man has a little kind of a niche cult following. It personifies, the 1980s. So, with that pedigree, I said, sure, we'll take it, and I'll do a start opening bid of $600 just to let people go. If you Google search Pauly Shore and Encino Man, you'll see him wearing this costume. And so that's kind of a cool thing. But it's going to be more niche, but I'll price it accordingly. If it happened to be, a Patrick Stewart Starfleet tunic from Next Generation, yeah, I would say absolutely I want it, and make sure obviously that the Paramount labels are in there. But we would start the bidding at probably 7,000, and then see where the chips fall. Obviously, I always try to be very, very conservative when I establish the opening bid, because really, if you go too retail or too high, I mean, that's short circuiting the auction process. You want to attract people to come participate, and really by doing that, you start low and then you just let people run. Everyone thinks they have a crack at it and they go for it.
Have you ever designed an auction just specifically targeting certain niche or cult movies? Because I would think that in itself could generate some interest. You have the Rocky Horror Picture Show items over here, the Big Lebowski items over here.
Well, it has to be okay. We do have a division, that we have worked, called Screen Bid within Heritage, that we have production sales. Like, for instance, several years ago at the very beginning of the MCU, We had the Marvel Studios was the consigner, and we basically got to the pick of the litter, and we had a Captain America: The First Avenger sale, and so the entire sale was devoted to that film. And it did extraordinarily well. I mean, we had the actual iconic combat uniform worn by Chris
Nice.
Evans, and I mean, this is a new film, and that's costume sold for $248,000. I mean,
Wow.
that's it's pretty remarkable. And so we recently had a sale for Succession. The HBO show.
Hmm.
And later this year, I'm not at liberty to share yet because we have not had a launch pad or an announcement. But if you stay tuned with us, there's some two really exciting properties that are going to be sold before the end of this year.
So going back to our favorite spaceships, things from Star Wars and Star Trek, and in this auction, you've got a very rare one-off maquette of the ship Serenity from Firefly.
Right.
How do you go about determining the provenance, the ownership, the like the crafter who made it? What's the process in verifying, yeah, this is what they said it is, and this
Well,
is.
this particular one, that particular maquette is a production maquette, and it comes with documentation. I mean, and it's also featured in a book as being the only three-dimensional maquette that the production used to digitally scan and then embellish the Serenity. So I mean, that one is documented, and it comes with the documentation. um Other things, like for instance, I'll bring it up because it's another ship and it's iconic, is the Y-wing. The
Mhm.
Y-wing didn't have the good housekeeping seal of approval like the maquette, but the point is it's screen matches to a T. It's built and constructed, I mean, beautifully. And it has a pedigree that I'm aware of, but I'm not at liberty to share, because some things we just keep under our belt because we want to protect the anonymity of our consigners, unless it's someone like Joey Pants who or George Chakiris, who were making a complete section of the catalog devoted to their property. But the Y-wing, I mean, every single aspect of it. I mean, the actual electrical inputs where the fiber optics go for, the halogen bulbs for the rear of the engines. The way it's constructed, everything else. It's the one. I mean, every aspect of it, screen matches. So it's one of two heroes that they used in the production of Star Wars, back in '77.
Has it been easy or hard in the past to go verify, like go to the model maker, say, hey, is this what you made?
Right. Well, sometimes you have to go to the people in the production. Other things, I have something that's slated for later this year from Flash Gordon, the old Flash Gordon serial. And
Oh.
that one is more difficult because no one is alive to, actually verify, the authenticity. Came from the studio, came from an octogenarian, a guy that was, at the time he was 12 or so, in the 50s, when Universal was being bought out by MCA. And so it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. But there are things with the construction that I'm thinking that it might not be a filming miniature. It might have been a promotional piece. One of the Flash Gordon rocket ships. So that particular one is one that we're doing some homework on, and we wanted to make sure it is what it is, or at least that we describe it what it is. So that's basically, sometimes things are a no-brainer. Sometimes some things you have to do a deep dive and get consultation from people who are film historians, visual effects historians, etc.
So talk about some of the items from Joe Pantoliano's collection. Was there anything in there that surprised you, that excited you?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, I love his boots. They're cowboy boots that say pants on the side, where where the loops where you pull up the bootstraps.
Uh,
They're custom made for him. I love his suit that he wore when he was having dinner with
Agent
Agent
Smith?
Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he goes, "I
nice.
want to be someone important, like an actor." You know, it's such an iconic scene from that movie. But it's great having stuff from insiders. It's never before been seen outside of the films or TV shows like The Sopranos in his case. But I mean, he took it from after production. It's been in his collection. He figures, well, might as well have someone else enjoy it and covet it, because really sitting in the closet, it's not really being appreciated. I think all of us are a bit guilty of that, even having knickknacks and so forth that are crammed in the closet. We save it for our kids. They're not going to want it. You know what I mean? It's funny, but so it's kind of smart of him to pick up the phone and offer it to the fans, because certainly when people spend their hard-earned money, I mean, they take very good care of it, and they're going to show it off and exhibit it to either friends or the public, depending on who buys it. So it's a fun process.
Speaking of costumes, there are some really, really nice pieces coming up in here. I'm curious. The one of the items that you have is Leia's slave girl outfit from Return of
Mm.
the Jedi.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't that auctioned off a while ago? Is this the same outfit coming back
It's not the
around?
same outfit. I mean, now I've seen this is the third costume that I've seen. I handled the first one that reached the market, and I sold it for Richard Miller himself. And the second one was sold by a competitor of ours, and this is the third. This one came from Richard Miller as well, or from his estate, because he passed away. And it was basically the estate via a ILM fellow employee. They're selling it. But yeah, I mean, those are made out of production parts. The actual brassiere, this particular rigid one, it actually has distressed crumbling foam rubber, and even has a little area with a little eye hook hole that they installed, that it was repaired on set. It must have been very uncomfortable, and that's why they opted to finally use a red rubber urethane that they painted gold, they call it the metal bikini, but it was not metal per se. It made the look kind of like pounded copper or something, but it was not. But yeah, Richard Miller himself was a jewelry maker, and he was hired by Nilo Rodith, who was the costume designer for the movie.
Okay, so this is a totally different one from the one that sold a
Yes,
few years back. Okay, cool.
correct.
That I mean that makes it more interesting, because this wasn't something that a collector had and decided to let go of. This is
To flip,
actually a
exactly. This
new
came.
one.
That's right. This one came from Miller's. He kept this one, and he passed, and then the person who acquired it from Miller's estate, or they are the ones that are passing it forward.
Talk about the artwork. There's several paintings of Star Trek ships. There's a gorgeous uh, concept painting from Blade Runner that I think was used on the cover of one of the novelizations. I remember that. I
Um,
remember seeing that photo before.
well, you have seen that photo before, but I'm not aware of a book. However, it was used in the Criterion Laserdisc release of Blade Runner.
Laser
Is on the
discs.
album. Do you remember the laser
Oh
discs?
yeah.
You know, the size of an record album at
Yep.
33 and a third for those old fashioned your people out there that remember what vinyl records look like. But yes, it was used for the Criterion release. So
Yeah.
it's published, which makes it enhances the value certainly. Sometimes, like we do have the Bob Peak art, and that's big. I mean, it's much bigger than a one sheet. A one sheet is 20, as a rule, 27 by 41 in height. And this Bob Peak is quite big. I don't have the dimensions in my head, but it's the Star Trek 4 that shows the Golden Gate Bridge, has the Klingon bird of prey zooming in underneath, and it has the portraits of Kirk, Spock, and the rest of the gang at the top. It's pretty iconic. It's beautiful.
The one that caught my interest when I scrolled through the catalog online was there's a caricature portrait of the Star Trek original series cast done by Al Hirschfeld. And the fact that the starting price is only $525 stunned me. I'm like, what's the
You see,
story with that one?
that means that I'm doing my job, because ultimately you just want to have things that start at a level that's going to get people excited, and I always think of the auction process as kind of, I call it a bidding pyramid. Okay. If you have a very, if you have a price that's seems very reasonable to a number of people, it's like the base of a pyramid. You get a lot of people at the bottom that start to bid. When the price goes up, I mean, people are going to naturally be dropping off the pyramid until ultimately you have two, and then you have the capstone, the winner. The more people at the bottom, the taller the structure is going to be, and that's kind of my theory. Case in point, this is kind of a very, very extreme case, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. In the Treasures of Planet Hollywood sale that we had in March, we had. Do you remember the movie Kingpin? Coen Brothers, Woody Harrelson, Bill Murray.
Yes.
Okay, very funny. But Ernie McCracken, the nemesis, the really obnoxious professional bowler played by Bill Murray, he had a clear bowling ball with a rose in the middle of it. Okay. And Planet Hollywood had it. It was donated by the Coen Brothers production company. Provenance was great. I said, someone's going to go crazy. I mean, that movie's got a cult following. In my gut, I thought, it'll sell for like $8 or $10 grand. And so I opened the bidding, which is the same as a reserve, at $1,500. Within the first week, you see how our auctions work. It's a live auction, but then you have people who can place. It's posted about a month prior to the sale online, and people who register, they can actually place absentee bids weeks in advance of the sale.
Oh, cool.
Then the day before the sale, it reaches a certain point, they stop the bidding, and then when it reaches the auction block in the live auction floor room, people are still online, but there are phone bidders and there are people on the floor who compete as well. And basically, the first week it went up to 27,500 immediately. Okay, we knew we had a hot potato. Okay, the day before the sale, it got up to $52,000. On auction day, it went from opened at 52 and it sold for $350,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it started at 1,500. That's 233.3 times the opening bid. Super extreme case, but a fun one to use as proof of concept. So anyway, back to the Hirschfeld print. It's a print, but it's signed and numbered by Hirschfeld. And so start a lot of times you can start at, we can't in a live auction start, just our company policy, we don't want anything to start less than $500. So we opened the bidding at $5. I guess we have a couple of bids on it. Someone's opened it at $5, and if there's a 525 now, I haven't looked, but you did. We'll see. And then people are going to continue bidding, and then it'll open at whatever it ends. Once it reaches the real auction block on auction day.
So the real opening bid won't truly be known until that item is up on the
what'll
25th
open
or
on
the
auction
26th.
day? Yeah, because it did open at 500, but right now it looks like, I guess there are two who are engaging at this time, and some people. For instance, it's all up to the person. I mean, if it were up to me, if I were bidding, I wouldn't put one bid on beforehand. I mean, because you just I don't know if it makes any difference. It's all academics. It's all styles. Some people like to play the game and start placing absentee bids. Some people like holding their cards close to their chest and not let anyone know that anyone is in the fold, ready to loaded for bear, if you will, to go after it. So it's all a matter of style and taste.
Well, I will let you in on the secret. When I saw it in the catalog, I immediately texted two friends of mine who are big Star Trek fans. And one of them, he lives in Brooklyn and he's also a big Broadway fan. So he's really familiar with Hirschfeld's work.
Sure, sure.
And he immediately said, "Wait, what? Send me a link right now."
So maybe he's one of those too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's because I was like, I can't believe this is here for this lower price. What's going on here? And so I have done my little bit to help promote one of the items.
No fun. No, that's cool. It is a neat piece because I mean, with something about caricatures, there's such a talent,
Mhm.
because there's some essence because they're obviously exaggerated, but you can see who they are and you recognize them. But they really are in a very exaggerated, uh, uh, you know, version of the person, but it's always a true talent. Those people you see in Central Park that
Mhm.
pay them $25 and you sit down and they make a caricature of you. But they get your features and exaggerate them, but they still are able to be recognizable. It's real talent. Hirschfeld was a master.
Oh, he like his art his caricatures are recognizable everywhere. Even if you don't remember his name, you see his artwork, I know who did that.
Right. That's
Um,
another sign of a talent. They have
yeah.
their own unique stamp, if you will.
Mhm. Now, I'm a huge fan of the story element of television and movies, and you have a lot of scripts in this auction that are owned by either, had been owned by the director or some of the cast. You've got and what is it listed? An early version of 2001 that was both with Kubrick and Clarke, Sir Arthur C. Clarke, and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
Talk about where those come from.
These things, they come out. What's special is, and we had a sale a couple, in May that was for instance, a Star Wars script that came from a guy he was basically one of the accountants. He was the accountant, executive accountant at Fox, and he basically was the one that had George Lucas, on a leash in the movie, the first Star Wars, because I mean he was over budget, and but it was an estimate. It was in 20th Century Fox wrappers. His name was Kent Swaim. And then he had in wrappers, Star Wars, but it still said The Adventures of Luke Starkiller before it became Skywalker. But it's, a lot of things that come from executives or people who are in the crew. And what's interesting about the 2001, when it's really early, it's one of the ones that there are fewer number out there or created. And because then they go through the revisions and then something becomes more refined and it becomes, closer to what you see on screen. But it's always nice to get a glimpse of what they look like or what the script looked like, because I really think, scripts are the Genesis document. Without the written word, we wouldn't have a story, and so it falls apart. I mean, we've seen enough bad movies that are just poorly written without proper structure and character development, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, but I love scripts. I mean, we have an early version of The Mummy as well, from the Karloff version,
Wow.
which is super rare. It's on Universal, has Universal wrappers on it, and that one should sell for into five figures.
Oh, yeah, I think I would it would be fun to have scripts from the original Universal Monsters movies. Those I would,
Oh, yeah.
I think I
No,
would
they
want.
are. I mean, the Frankenstein, we've handled Frankenstein. We've had them a more later version. This is the earliest version we have that's in that's going to be sold next week. But yeah, I mean, it's really fun to see what they've changed, how they tweak certain things along the way. The evolution of the script.
So for you, what was the most, I guess, interesting or exciting piece that you found for this auction?
Well, here's one. It's definitely not the most expensive, but this is um, it's James Dean's academic record from high school. I don't know if you saw that, but what's interesting about this is that that Dean, obviously his life was short. He died in 1955. When he was in his 20, I think it was he 24 or 20, maybe 26. But anyway, it has a little photo of Dean from high school, and it tells you basically 6 years of his academic. So basically it's his junior high and high academic record. In this particular piece, and it's always good to know what's the story behind this. The Robert Altman, you remember the director,
Yeah.
famous director, he co-directed the James Dean story that was released in 57. So very shortly after he died, he got together and this George W. George was the co-director, and this academic record. Somehow the production got a hold of this original record and they featured it in the James Dean story. I mean, it was a theatrical release in theaters. And he kept it, and his family had it, and his family's actually selling it. But in there, when he was in a sophomore, I believe, he had driver training and safety. Okay. He was known to be kind of a reckless, he would
Hmm.
drive his Porsche on Mulholland and, race it, and the tires would go bald. He would change the tires and do it some more. I mean, he was a racing freak, but he was still an amateur, of course. And he ended up dying in that car wreck,
Right,
in his
right.
550 Spider, but he got a C and a C plus in driver safeties, which is kind of ironic, right?
Oh my.
Yeah, but I
Talk
mean that's
about
a really cool thing.
foreshadowing.
It's not theatrically oriented, but it's connected to the persona, so I think it's a cool thing, right?
I would never have get well, the fact that the document was in the documentary
Right.
kinda cements
And it comes
it
with a script for
yeah.
original script from the James Dean story as well. So we thought
Wow.
that was good kind of connective tissue.
Wow. Okay, so how long does it take to, I guess, arrange an auction? Like, where do you say, "Okay, we're only gonna have this many items?" Like, how long does it take to actually curate an auction before you actually publicize, "Hey, we're gonna have this auction in 2 months?"
Well, how we work, is that we have an auction date and a target. We have a target date, and we know when we have to have all the consignments in by a particular date. Then we have the descriptions have to be done by a certain time. The photography has to be done by a certain time, and then it goes through proofing. Then it goes to print. So we work. Basically, it's that the scheduling is working backwards. But to answer your question, by it depends, because these come from, and more often than not, these sales are multi-consigner sales. We had a sale last year from the Greg Jein collection. That was one collector. And so we had to go through everything and create a sale. And that one, was just difficult, and it had a lot of things to sift through. And, that one took over 6 months to get it ready. But typically, we can have it done in about 4 months or so, I would say. By the time you start collecting things, getting things ready, and you say, okay, we're going to put this in this sale that's going to be in December of 2024, for instance. And so it's kind of an ongoing process, and you keep on getting things that are coming in, streaming in slowly but surely, and then they have to go to photography. But it's not like falling off a truck. I mean, you have to. There's a lot of work that goes into it because you need to make sure that the photography knows how to shoot something. And you can't shoot a spaceship. Let's say this is a spaceship. You don't want to shoot it necessarily, like a frisbee from above. You want to say, okay, what does it look like on screen? Do you want to get it at a quarter angle, right? And so, you have to direct every single lot how it needs to be shot. Then you have to properly describe it. What is it made of? Well, if it's a filming miniature, what does it have? Metal substructure? Where do the armature sockets, the mounting sockets go? Because typically they have several axes that you want to shoot it from. The starboard, port, starboard, up, down, etc. So there's a lot of technicalities that go into it. It's not as easy as it may seem when you look at the catalog. You kind of take things for granted when you flip through a catalog.
I would actually geek out over watching the photo shoot for some of these model ships, because you mentioned Greg Jein. This is these are model ships from films that he's worked on, right?
Well, the Greg Jein sale was last October, but to give you an example, in this sale, Greg ended up, he built an Excelsior that was used in Star Trek Voyager in an episode called Flashback. And he was a model builder. He got his fame early in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He built the mothership that was so famous that you see at the end of the movie. But then Spielberg loved his work. He's worked in 1941 that built all of the miniatures of the old, the Santa Monica Pier and everything else. And then, Star Trek was his passion. He worked on so many other productions, but also he was a collector. So he liked things from back in the serial days, from the 1930s, 40s. And so he collected everything, scripts, filming miniatures to hand props, weapons, phasers, tricorders, that type of thing. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this auction is chock full of stuff that science fiction and movie fans will definitely enjoy. It's July 25th and 26th. The actual in-person auction is in Dallas, correct?
Correct. The sale is in Dallas, and we do get people that fly in, but more often than not, in today's world, we have Heritage Live. You go and actually, you click as the auction's going, or leave absentee bids like you were talking about in the Hirschfeld. Or you can set up a phone if you're old school, or if you're going to have spotty cell reception. We call you, register, you contact us at Heritage, and we set up a phone, and we would call you about 5 lots in advance, maybe 7 or 8 lots in advance if you're in Europe or overseas. International, it takes a little longer to get online, but the point is then you basically would say, okay, we're at 5,000. Do you want to go to 5,500? Yes or no? And then, you hold the paddle up. You ought to watch one of our sales because it's kind of fun. You just literally can stream live when it happens, and you can see I'll be on the bank of phones. I'm going to be there bidding on behalf of some of my clients who are going to be phone bidding that day.
So people can observe the auction live without member.
I have a lot of people that actually, even when they're on the phone, they're still watching it, but they just want to make sure that they're on a phone, that their server doesn't crash or something. They want to make darn certain that they are, that's probably the second best thing is to phone bid. But a lot of people just, they bid online.
Cool. Well, I will include links to both the catalog and where people can go to Heritage Auction's website and prepare themselves to watch the auction. Brian, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom, your experience with Hollywood collectibles with us today.
Oh, anytime, my pleasure. Yeah, I would love to be on again at any time in the future. I'm sure we're going to have some goodies that you're going to like to talk about.
I will definitely mark my calendar for that.
Fantastic.
Thank you again, and we'll be back with more Slice of Sci-Fi right after this.
Thank you.